Hey everyone, it's time to look at our latest global original unit. Actually, Cheerful Corolla Ayaka isn't a global original unit, she's just a story unit from the FFBE game, regular game. So it's kind of surprising that Gumi went this way, but I believe, or I'd say they ran out of ideas or units to remake, even though we have plenty of Christmas units left untouched. Lucas, Levinson, Kryler could use an update, Christine could use an update, Felix could use an update, White Noel could use an update. So it's kind of surprising they went with Ayaka, but I don't mind. So let's get started with the sadly also latest SLB global unit. It's really sad to see that Gumi is piling on the SLB trash can, but maybe she's different. And spoilers, to some degree, she is. So Cheerful Corolla Ayaka is a mage unit with a very heavy ice focus and a minor supporter. Why minor? We'll find out in a minute or two. And yeah, let's check out some of her abilities. So the big burst damage she has is finally dashing through the snow, which is on one hand only one single use per battle, which is very annoying. But then again, it kind of makes sense because it has the 150% amp physical and magical for 2 turns on it. It's the standard 150, and to some degree I'm actually happy that this is on her main nuke. But on the other hand, it's kind of still that it's just 1 use per battle, but so be it. So the main part of this is the ice magic damage, and please note this really clearly states ice magic damage, so this uses magic killers, which is to some degree a downgrade compared to units such as Olive, who use physically typed magic damage, which you can imbue, which uses physical killers. This is strict locked, hard locked to ice, and uses magic killers too, which is still harder to come by than physical damage. But yeah, all in all, this is a 520 plus 1310x modifier for non-morale. But if you're using morale scaling, this goes up to 1020 and 1935x modifier. This can further boosted by the LB and SLB, which we'll come to in just a minute. And then she also had, oh, and by the way, this is quad bolting strike. So you have 35 hits and 1 that is the big nuke at the end. So this one is heavily backloaded yet again. So make sure to always somewhat finish this within a chain to get the maximum damage out of this. The other ability that is noteworthy is her Emboldening Song, which again is only 1 use per battle, and I don't get this. It's a 160% killer buff, physical and magical, to beasts, demon, and stones. I totally see why they made this a once per battle, because this is 3 types at 160% killer buff. But color me this, Gumi. Why not just give her 3 distinct killer buffs, say beast, demon, and stone, at 160, lock them to EX plus 2 or EX plus 3 for the sake of that being too high for a regular skill to have, and let us use this every 5 or so turns with a, say, 3 or 4 turn duration. Why make us suffer? And the reason why I'm so mad about this ability is that, for example, this current clash and the prior clash really wanted us to burst twice. Now this clash in particular wants us to do continuous damage or burst heavily 3 times. With an ability such as this, you can heavily burst only once. Now take the finale. This one is only available once and it bursts heavily once. And then you have to downgrade yourself to Carol of Frosty Snow, which for all that matters isn't the worst ability modifier. It's 200x and 425x for the finishing move, which is 625x or multiplied by 4. That's still 2500x modifier in total. But it doesn't take a degree in math to realize that this ability is vastly inferior to Finale, meaning her continuous or sustained damage is a lot lower with Carol of Frosty Snow than it could be with 2 stacks of Finale, for example. And this is what all of this is coming down to. So what I believe is that Gumi tried to make a unit that is both kind of sort of fitting into the JP meta, where it's super single burst centric for Dark Visions, but then also tried to shoehorn in that Clash of Wills viability by giving her morale stuff and trying to make her sustained damage with Carol Frosty Snow somewhat decent. And I would say they nailed it in the Dark Vision department, even though her Dark Vision damage isn't that super high up. But it's still sufficient enough to make Ice Team somewhat viable. Whereas they kind of failed so much in the Clash of Wills department, for damage that is, especially, that they had to make this particular Clash of Wills heavily mage favored. And we'll get to this later in this review when we check out the damage numbers. And I don't know how you can fail at something so basic in unit kit design that this is the unit that's coming out. Like, I would love to have units such as Roberta or Sylvie again. Sure, Sylvie's super overpowered, so let's take Sylvie out of the equation here. I just want to have units that excel in 2 roles, mainly supporter and damage at the same time, and Roberta is the perfect example of how you do this. Roberta is a perfectly fine supporting unit in base, and she's a very, very capable DPSing unit in Brave. Hell, you can even take the base form and still deal somewhat decent damage with a Quad Mystic Breath. Surely it doesn't deal a great damage, but it's still a very nice thing to have because it's tag element. So I just want more units like Roberta and not like Cheerful Ayaka who do a lot of things, but none of them really good. And that's sad. So the limit burst. The base limit burst is a 25% rod imperil, and I also dislike that the only way to rod imperil the boss is either via LB or SLB. It is a stacking, no, it's not a stacking limit burst, sorry. It's a 200x modifier LB for non-clash and a 300x modifier for clash. So it's not the worst, but very, very far from being actually decent, even if you account for Magic Store. But the most important part here is at the end of this is a 60x modifier for morale-based damage for herself. 10 turns, and this also stacks with the SLB, which is very cool, and you should always use the LB and SLB to further modifier boost both Finale and Carol of Frosty Snow, even though no, both apply to both, so it's fine. So always use both before you use your Brick Burst, but we'll get to the rotation later. So the Super Limit Burst, Brilliant Blizzard, is a 35% rod imperil. Nice, 3 turns, kind of sad. I would have preferred 5 turns like most of the recent JP units. It is amping her ice magic damage by 60% for 3 turns too. I don't understand why it's not AoE, but so be it. And then it is a timer was too soon. It is a 60x modifier increase yet again, but in Clash this goes up to 135%, and both of those, the LB and the SLB modifier increases stack, which is rather cool, especially for Finale and at the very end of all of this, she also fully stores magic with no downside. So this is just a flat out 300% magic store. And compared to your usual magic storing abilities such as Magic Boost Plus, this does not reduce your spirit by half, which is thumbs up. And they did some thought process here, and it is a good ability. So the SLB, I like it. It's a decent, and it's a reminiscent of a supporting kit that Ayaka usually used to have, and I like it. Now let's check out some more things. So on the right hand side we have what actually makes Ayaka's kit somewhat decent, and that's a 100% rolling ice amp. Just like Sylvie's amp, this one removes all prior imbues, and imbues with ice starts off at 50% amp, goes to 75%, and ends up on the second autocast, meaning on turn 3, with that sweet 100% ice physical and magical amplification. So very good stuff. I like that she has it, and totally fine for this being a 1 use per battle. It's absolutely Gucci. Obviously Sylvie's double Magnus would be preferred, but I get it. Sylvie is a premium unit in disguise, whereas Ayaka just is a time limited unit. Alright, so the other abilities that she also sports: Introduction, Good Tidings, and Spirit of the Seasons. The Introduction, it is a very, very weak Imperil to Ice, Earth and Light, 120% only. It cures Magic Break for all allies, which is nice, but rather seldom used. And a 300% Magic buff for all allies, and also increases Ice, Earth and Light resistance by 150%, which is perfectly fine for this clash, but otherwise not so much needed for anything else unless the boss actually does these elements. But still nice to have, and it fills a decent chunk of morale, 400 points. The Spirit of the Season is her self 200% magic killer buff for Beast, Demon and Stone. Please keep in mind this reads magic only. So if you wanted to use her Vision Card ability, which we'll get to in a few minutes, it won't work because the Vision Card ability is physically typed. And what it also does, and this is rather disappointing, it's a 50% typed mitigation for Beast, Demon and Stone. Now, I explained this in my capping video for the difference between a 75% typed mitigation and an 80% typed mitigation, and the difference there was already huge. The gist of it is an 80% typed mitigation is 20% more efficient than a 75% typed mitigation. And this one is only 50%, meaning using Cheerful here again as in comparison, this one would be a staggering 40% increase or decrease in damage taken. No, that's wrong what I'm doing here. No, it is right. So you'd be taking so much, no, it's 60% even. I did this wrong. So you're taking 60% more damage with only Ayaka's mitigation than you would if you used Cheerful in this case. And that's a huge difference. So all in all, while 50% reads cool, it is absolutely bad. But alas, it's a 200% self-killer buff, so I guess that's decent. The other thing that I'm kind of mad about is Festive Maiden, her EX plus 3 unlock. While the stats she gains are great, 750 HP and 625 magic, 50% magic evasion, which is totally useless by the way, this one only has 50% modifier cap. Why 50%, Gumi? Tsukiko got 100%, Chizuru got 100%, Freyevia got 100%. Why can't Ayaka? All these units that I just mentioned have 6x cap innately, whereas Ayaka sits here at 5.5x cap. Like, this actually means you still have to waste that materia slot or equipment piece slot for 6x cap, and you will always overcap unless you pulled for the near units, got them to EX plus 1, and thus got the chains of protection and chains of strength materia, but it's still a very valuable materia slot, 1 out of 4, that you will have to waste for 6x cap. Why not just give her 6x cap naturally? This would not break the game. This would just open up her for more killers, more stats, And she needs those because she is very far from being the top of the DPS spec. So this is one more of these inconsistencies which I don't understand. Neither is her own vision card nor is the premium card fixing this. So this must be a deliberate decision to make an otherwise half decent unit actually good. And it just boggles my mind how things such as this pass through quality assurance, if there is any quality assurance at Gumi. At this point, I don't even know if they have quality assurance, because after A2's super botched SLB frames, I'm just doubtful they ever check or play the game themselves. And this is one more indication of that, especially the unit designers. I don't know what they are smoking lately with these units, but yeah. Please get the guy back who made Roberta or Sylvie. That guy deserves a medal. And then the TMR and STMR bonus. It is good. Let's say this. So, and this is also kind of funny, because this one you are forced to use the TMR and STMR to get the 5x cap even. So you cannot ignore. Well, technically speaking, you will always use the STMR because it is good, but still forcing you to use for TMR or STMR for a 5x cap baseline is kind of worrisome, so to say. So yeah, 1500 static magic, 1x chain cap, 250 magic true double hand, and it upgrades her standard attack for something super unimpressive. So yeah, one thing to notice, that if you're wearing her STMR, she is already true double hand magic capped, which is good. I appreciate that. And that's good SLB unit design. If they are doing SLB units, I want them to be instantly capped on magic and true double hand magic. They did with Ayaka, so that's thumbs up. They learned their lesson, at least in that regard. Also, she does sport quite decent resistances, 50% across the board and 75% for ice. And with her TMR equipped, that's another 50% on top. So she has naturally 100% resistances across the board, and 125 for ice, which is very, very nice, and it makes gearing her for resistance Tetris rather easy. So thumbs up for that. This is, when it comes to the baseline things such as stats and gearing easing, this is a well done unit, but still the passives and some of the abilities, they heavily are lacking. So let's check out the items. The Trustmaster is an accessory, 80 MP, 60 magic, rather low, but it has 500 static magic for Ayaka herself, which kind of makes up for the loss in regular stats. So this is about on par, slightly above the Clash rings. It also sports 25% unconditional ice, earth, and light resistance, and another 25% ice, earth, light resistance. So 50% for those three, not all elements. Sorry, that was my mistake. But ice, earth, light resistance, 50% for Ayaka and 25% for anybody else, which is nice. It's a good addition. The STMR is a rod, two-handed, standard rod variants, 1.25 to 1.75, 150 magic points, and 240 magic. This one has an auto-cast ability, passive, every turn, grants 100 morale plus 50 per active unit, which adds up to 400 in total. Cool things, very good. It's especially nice for Clash of Wills if you want to easen up your morale again. And it's perfectly fine on units that have a Brave Shift and they are sitting in Brave Shift until the big burst damage is coming up. So that's a decent chunk of morale each turn. And Ayaka herself gains 500 static magic, which is okay, I guess. If we were to ever get a 4 or 5 Dark Vision rod, this one would falter against this, but for the time being, it's a good weapon. The Vision card is a 130 magic, very, very good, one of the best indeed. At level 4, you gain 40% MP in magic, 5% MP regeneration as well. And what's really cool about this is the level 7 ability. And this is rather unique for global units too, especially for their own cards, because this enables a new ability, which is called Whipped Cream Garden. This is a 1000x physically scaled imbuable magic attack with 50% spirit ignore, aka 2000x in total. and it is innate quad cast bolting strike. So this perfect chains with her finale or quad casted Frosty Snow or whatever the ability was. And it's really good. 2000x modifier, especially for Dark Visions, isn't that bad. And it trumps certain units, and it's pretty much the reason why Regina will never see play, because instead of using one slave on Regina, you can just give that unit this particular vision card, and you'll be Gucci, Tamaguchi even. And lastly, there is the level 10 ability, 500 static magic and 50% demon stone killer physical magical. The level 10 ability or passive is just for FFBE units only, which is totally fine, but the important part is that everybody can use this level 7 passive. And that's huge, and it makes the vision card exceptionally good. So all in all, I feel like all three of these items are very strong. The TMR is superb for herself. Please note that the 500 static magic does not stack. But the STMR is really, really good. I like it. I know some people say it's not that great. It's still a very, very nice item for Clash of Worlds. Even if it's just for the morale gain, this one will ease up your morale gain. Even though it might not be the very best item to have, mind you. But it's still a very, very good item to possess. And the vision card is perfect. I personally have 3 of those. And if you were to ask me how many you should have, at least 1. Ideal would be 2. 3 is nice, but yeah, I'd say you should have 2. And truthfully, you will have 2 if you go for EX plus 3 Ayaka or EX plus 3 her eventually via Shard Dungeon, and that's fine. 3 is rather rarely usable, but there will be certain cases where you would like to have 3 of those. So yeah, must have STMR and vision card in that regard. Now let's check out the latest premium card. It is a Knight of Gift Giving. This one is 500 HP baseline and 130 base magic. So pretty much on par with her own card. And the passives, 500 static magic plus 100% magic, 50% HP, 30% Ice Light Earth resistance, and 100% Demon and Stone Killer, physical magical. And it also unlocks a new ability for Final Fantasy Brave Exvius units only, which is a 300% magic store. But please note, this one has the downside of also reducing your SPR by 50%. So while this is a very, very decent magic card, the killers I feel like are rather just okayish. Stone Killer, fine. But Demon, we have a huge abundance of 100% Demon Killer materials out there already. So I feel like it's not that great, but it's still a good card. Now, please don't get swayed by the magic store. It sounds really good on paper, but isn't in reality, because most of the units, especially the global units, because this one only reads FFBE only, have their own magic store. Like take Freyevia or Olive, for example. Both of those have 500% magic store baked into the kit. Olive has this via Fire Cannon Fire, Freyevia via Insistence in base form. And most of the other FFBE mages have a 300% magic store innately anyway, such as Dank Rain, for example, who can quadcast his modifier increase or magic store, which is 200% per turn. Yeah, sure, this vision card would get the job done quicker. But then again, Dark Rain's vision card is a little bit stronger because he needs that LB damage, and this one has no LB damage. So this is clearly meant for units that do chaining rather than LB finishing or LB chaining. And for those units, which is usually the case for chainers, they have 500 cap anyway, such as Freyevia. And sadly, it's just that Ayaka is missing the 500% store, but oh well. So all in all, a Knight of Gift Giving is one of the strongest mage cards, going by pure stats and being on paper the best, but in reality it's just good when you need the killers. And I used this, for example, on Olive this clash because it was perfect for the killers. Olive was lacking both Stone and Demon killer. She's hard to gear actually for most of the things, just because she has very low LB modifier or LB passives. So this one eased up the gearing on Olive, and that's your main purpose use of this card in general, is that if you need either of the killers, this card is perfectly fine because it is one of the highest magic stats, but otherwise it's just a safe skip unless you want to go for top 50 Dark Visions. Alright, let's check out the damage stuff. And please note that I updated my sheet for the current Clash of Wills, meaning this Clash of Wills is heavily favored towards mages, as you can tell. The boss has 902,000 defense, whereas it only has 676,500 spirit, which is about 2/3 of the SPR than it is defense, which is crazy. So this is the build of Ayaka. Rather easy. This is a Dark Vision build because the Clash of Wills build is super easy to do, honestly. There's nothing much that you need to do. And as you can tell, she has a lot of magic. Magic Store is obviously accounted for. It's built versus Aquatic Machina, and even if for that rather hard case, she is very, very easy to gear. Even she has 4 fixed slots, the 4 fixed slots being the 2 clash pieces here, as well as her STMR and TMR. And having 4 free slots is really, really nice. So she is super, super slot efficient in that regard. But still annoying that she cannot wear the static attack ring or static magic ring because she only has 5.5x cap innately. And I also provided the personal max burst rotation. It is a slight difference if you want to go for a party max rotation, but I'll guide you through it. So first things first, you want to use Sparkling Snow before anything else. This one is a 10 turn duration modifier increase, 60x, which is cool. We don't care about the Rod Emperor for now, it's only 25% anyway. That's totally fine. On the very next turn, you want to use abilities such as Introduction for the Ice Emperor, Spirit of the Season if you need the killers, otherwise you can totally skip this. And if you want to maximize party damage for Ice in particular, you would use her Rolling Ice Amp. In that case, you would have to wait a little bit with the SLB on the next turn, but still all things Gucci. And then you have 2 free attacks that you could use for Carol of Frosty Snow or the AoE Killer buff, for example, which lasts 5 turns. So there's a lot of things to do that are variations depending on whether you want to maximize ice damage for the entire party or just a personal max burst damage rotation. But for the personal max damage rotation, this is it. On the 3rd turn, you want to use her SLB or whenever that comes up for you if you don't have her at EX +3. And on the very next turn, because she also has that magic store in her SLB, you want to use a Finale, dashing through the snow for the big burst. Again, if you want to incorporate the rolling amplification, you would delay the SLB for a turn prior to the 100% LB amplification rolling, which would pretty much offset all of this by 1 turn. You would have on your you would use probably Carol of Frosty Snow 4 times on the 3rd turn. On the 4th turn, you would use Brilliant Blizzard, and on the 5th turn, Finale, which perfectly lines up with the 5 turn physical DPS meta, for example. So that's all fine. It's all good. It's still a 4 to 5 turn preparation time, and that's totally okay. Not only for Clash of Wills, but also for Dark Visions. So thumbs up. It isn't as bad as I thought it would be after reading her initial stuff or going through all of this. I was at work when I first took a look at her kit, and I was like, ooh, this looks rather obnoxious, but it actually isn't that bad. So yeah, nice one. Now the comparison. So this is the Dark Vision comparison. Ayaka is middle of the pack. Yeah, it's kind of middle of the pack is actually what it is, especially when it comes to DPS. She is a solid mage, so to say. no real complaints here. 3.2 billion on my sheet is still pretty good. Cloud being a huge outlier here, as well as the A2 and 2B. All three of those are premium units. Them being so high up on the sheet is only natural. But Golbez is also up there. He heavily benefits from all of this. Charade with MP scaling meteor. So yeah, but still, Ayaka sits at 83% of Black Mage Golbez. Ultimate Regina got updated on my sheet for the 100% amplification, which greatly improved her DPS. But keep in mind, this still requires one unit to sacrifice its damage. And this is not worth it anymore, especially with Ayaka's vision card ability. Sacrificing a unit for Regina will never be worth it. And the reason is that the vision card ability is 2000x, and as you can tell, Ayaka only has a 2070 modifier herself, meaning the unit that uses this card will perform about as well as Ayaka. Obviously, that unit itself won't have the 150% ice amp, it's just going to have a 100% ice amp, but the damage is still so much higher than Regina plus Dead Slave combined that it's not going to be worth sacrificing that slot. On the other hand though, because we do have this vision card and Ayaka's 100% ice amp, ice teams in general are now a lot better off and they are a viable team. However, it does require a heavy investment and an investment into units that you usually didn't want to have prior to Ayaka. One example of that being Yish, for example. She would require her crowns, or Tyvas and Yish is also a decent option. So it's an investment into units that are generally not that good or not that good. But still, ice teams, a viable option if you want to go that route. Still lightning, if we were to ever get edge crowns or an intrinsic ability for work, they could come back too. In in Clash of Worlds, like I mentioned, this one, please keep in mind that this particular clash is heavily favored towards mage DPS. The main reason is that the defense is a lot higher than the spirit. So that means that Ayaka is unsurprisingly the #1 DPS unit for this particular clash. Any realistic comparison is unnecessary because as mages are heavily favored. So I feel like this month's clash is so bad in terms of comparing units, physical and magical units, that it's totally redundant to do so. But I made the comparison as to what happens when defense and spirit are identical again. And in this case, 2B and A2 deal a lot more damage, or 2B deals a lot more damage than Ayaka, and A2 is about on par. Now, the actual results indicate that Ayaka is 99% of A2's damage and 88% of 2B's damage, which is not too bad for a supporter unit. Keep in mind that A2 and 2B are strict DPS units, whereas Ayaka has that supporter type on her kit as well. So that's kind of expected. And it also goes to show that 2B and A2, even though they are heavily nerfed by the boss's huge stats, they still manage to keep up rather well, even though you're not supposed to use physical DPS here. And Tiana, even though she does use an intrinsic ability, is just not keeping up. She deals more damage than Wilk, but that's not really hard to do because Wilk fell off a cliff real bad, sadly. Alright, let's take a look at the rating explanation. If you're watching my video for the first time, please pause the video, read this through at your own leisure and pace. I will skip through and we'll check out the verdict. So Ayaka, I rated her at a 7 out of 10. I was considering an 8 out of 10, which would be perfect or would match description, the rating explanation perfectly, but she is a 7 out of 10. I can't just justify the 8 out of 10 here when there's several really critical things keeping her from that score. So the good things: damage output it's decent. It's good. I don't mind it. It's nice. And she's a strong unit for both Clash and Dark Visions. I feel like for the first time that Ayaka, compared to Tiana, will not be used will be used unironically going forward, especially when ice is a decent element. And I also like her TMR and Vision card and STMR story, and she's super easy to gear for literally anything, even though, and that's one of the bad things about her, that she has 5.5x cap innately. I think it's still criminally stupid that Gumi did this, but even with this huge negative point, she's super easy to gear for most of the things, or everything, literally, meaning she could have more potential use in the upcoming future, even though she's hard locked to ice, but maybe this won't hurt her as much as we are all expecting. Fingers crossed and full copium on that one. I don't want to have another Tiana incident. But the other thing that I feel is like really bad is that her kit in general outside the 100% AoE ice amp is rather weak. And I know many people say, but she has 160% AoE killer buffs for 3 races, that's cool. Yeah, unless it's not those 3 races, and all the other buffs that she has. She doesn't have an innate 400% stat buff at all, for example. She doesn't have physical killers on herself, so using the vision card ability for herself is a huge downgrade. It's just so much inconsistency across the board again that I feel like her support kit is weak outside of that 100% amp, and I just can't justify not deducting a point for this. I didn't deduct a point for her hard lock to ice. I never usually do, so I won't do it for her, but keep in mind I do not appreciate hard locked elements to units. And if you're using any of the other abilities, the earth and light abilities for example, they just fare so much worse than anything else, and you're better off using her vision card ability. But then again, it's still, or she still is going to lack killers unless you can cover them with the 160% amp killer buff. So all in all, Ayaka performs obviously best in ice-based teams, can be a decent addition for any other element due to the vision card ability, but it's probably usually not that good to go that route. If you wanted to use another element, I would probably suggest using a different unit. That's most likely going to end up being the better call. But easily, she is the best of the 3 Christmas units that we've gotten between Aldrin, Tiana, and Ayaka. It's not that hard to say that, or not that surprising to say that Ayaka is the best one. Tiana was a dud, Aldrin was a super dud, so the bar was already very, very low, and Ayaka easily can push through that. So yeah, solid pull in general, especially for the vision card. I always want to say TMR, but it's the STMR that is actually decent, and especially the vision card too. So yeah, and that is pretty much the end of this review. Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful Christmas evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you're from. Happy Hanukkah. And this probably was my last review / video for this year, because going by the data mine, we'll have Christmas Charlotte next week, and that's a super dud pull. So I probably won't be doing any video until the week after Charlotte, which probably is going to be Yuffie. So it'll be some time before we see us again, but take care, all the best, get well into 2023, and we'll see each other in the new year with cool new videos and hopefully good new global units. Take care, bye bye.